Alright, what's up, fellow wormers? I had to start the video over. But this is one of my bins. This bin is basically coconut core. It does not have the new bedding in it, which is the alpaca manure. This is coconut core. This bin is probably about, I'm going to say, probably about 2 months overdue from being harvested, but I'm just keeping it going. Doesn't have a ton of worms in it as the other ones. Great population, but feeling the castings. It is good moisture. So I'm gonna feed it some pumpkin, and we're gonna go through about 3 bins that I have that are still coconut core, and we're just gonna feed them. So I got some rings. I took out the seeds. So I'm going to give this particular bin 2 rings. I'm going to allow it to go. What I like to do is freeze it, thaw it out, and then give it to the worms. But this is fresh pumpkin. I didn't get a chance to do it. I just got it today from a coworker. So I got 4 boxes of pumpkin coming, and I'm going to feed all the bins some pumpkin. But this one, I'm just going to give it 2 for now. It's probably going to take a little longer for it to break down because it hasn't been frozen and kind of break down the walls of the pumpkin, but that's all right. They'll go to town on it fairly quickly. These bins have a lot of bacteria and a lot of fungi and everything in it. So with that, it's going to start to break down. It's just going to attack these pumpkins, and it's actually going to start to break it down. So we're good. I have no problem with that. But it's just the first bin. So we're going to grab another bin. We're going to feed it some pumpkin. But for now, this is the first bin that we're actually going to add some pumpkin. All right, this is bin number 2. This bin was fed some alpaca manure. Most of it's gone. Quite a bit of worms in here. Some biochar to kind of dry up the excess moisture that's in this bin. But I'm going to keep this bin going because actually the 2 bins that you just seen, the first bin and this bin, they need a little more population as far as worms. There's not a overpopulation, or there's not a ton of worms in this particular bin. So I did order some worms from Northeast Worms. I actually got some worms from them before. They were good worms. I was happy with what I got. So like I said, this bin was a little moist. I added some biochar to it, and that actually did help with the moisture. So what I'm going to do, and this bin has good moisture, I'm going to feed these worms some pumpkin. I'm actually going to feed them quite a bit, this particular bin. Going to give them probably 3 pieces. And they'll be happy with that. They'll kind of devour that pretty quick. Like I said, the only difference with this particular is that it hasn't been frozen, which breaks down the walls of the pumpkin. So it's pretty fresh, still kind of hard pumpkin, but as it sits in there, it'll start to quickly start to become mature, and they will start to eat it. So I'm not worried about that. But this is bin number 2. Good moisture. So that bit of pumpkin that I added, not a problem. once it becomes a little mature to them and the micros start to attach themselves to it, it'll be a great bin. This is bin number 3. This is the bin that I know you guys have seen this bin a couple of times. It actually still has the diatomaceous earth around it. I had a problem with the mites in this particular bin, so that's one of the other reasons why I haven't changed it. It's got good moisture. I mean, this is a nice moisture bin. It's got a lot of worms. I mean, as you can see, good population in this particular bin. Won't add worms to this particular bin, but this has good moisture. Just going to mix it up a little bit, kind of move around the castings, kind of bring up what's from the bottom to the top and what the top is to the bottom, so that actually helps with the worms kind of eating what might have been at the top. So perfect. So let's see, I have some small pumpkin left. I'm gonna feed them probably about 4 pieces of pumpkin. And when I get more pumpkin in, which I'm supposed to get 4 boxes of pumpkin tomorrow from one of the guys at work, and as they start to devour the pumpkin, I'll actually add more and more to these particular bins. All the 3 bins, just a note, the 3 bins that I actually have showed you are bins that are actually only have still coconut core. It doesn't have any of the new bedding in it. I'm going to keep actually a couple of bins that are actually, which I'm using now, a mixture of peat moss and the alpaca manure. So like this one, I'm going to let it keep going. I'm probably going to feed it constantly with pumpkin, allow them to devour that. And then eventually I'll go ahead, probably about a month down the line, I'll go ahead and actually harvest this particular one, as I will with the other 3, once I kind of get rid of the pumpkin. But I'll probably feed these bins more of the pumpkins than the new bedding ones. So that's what they're getting. So they'll be happy with that. All right. So let's see what else we got. So this particular bin is a new bin that I just actually started. It's a little bit of the new bedding, which is the alpaca manure and the and the it's actually not coconut core. It's actually alpaca manure and the peat moss, which the new bedding is. This particular bin does not have a lot of worms in it. What I did was, when I actually cleaned out one of the bins, I actually took some of those worms and actually added it into this particular bin. Doesn't have a lot of bedding in it. Probably has about 3 inches of bedding in it. But once again, I did order some worms from Northeast. Once I get those worms, the majority of them are gonna go into this bin. And when I get ready to get the worms, once I get the delivery statement, it tells me when, excuse me, the worms are going to be coming in. I'm actually going to fill this particular bed up with more of the bedding that I'm using, which is 50%, not 50%, but probably about 70% alpaca manure and probably about 30% of peat moss. And I'm going to add more bedding to it, bring it up to the level of 6 inches, and then I'm going to add that pound of worms to this particular bin. So this is going to be a new bin. I did take the worms that were left in this particular bin and add them to another bin. Excuse me. That was a little, that wasn't populated as much as I would like it to be. So this particular bin, I'm going to start over, and it's going to be the newest bin. So that's why there's no date on this particular bin, because once I get those 1 pound of worms and I add the new bedding to this, about 6 inches, I'm going to actually then add a date on it, the new date, which is whatever the worms are actually delivered on. And then I'll go from there. But I got about 2 pieces of pumpkin left. I am going to feed them the last 2 pieces of pumpkin. And we know pumpkin is like candy to them. It's almost just like the watermelon, where they devour it. The watermelon that I did add to those other bins, to this particular bin, not this bin, but the other bins that are coconut core, they devour that. I also did a little test just to see if they're going to eat the watermelon rind in the ones that actually have the new bedding, which is the alpaca manure and the peat moss. And they did devour that, so I know they will eat both. So I'm going to add this little bit to it. It's only 2 pieces, but that's fine, just to give them something more to eat. And like I said, once I get my worms in, this bin will be populated to basically 1,000 worms plus, because there are worms in here already. So I'll be happy to do that. So that's what this is about. It is a pumpkin feeding. We know pumpkins like candy to them, just like the watermelon rinds. They love it. But as I get more, I will feed every single bin some pumpkin. And I know, based on giving a bin that has the peat moss and the alpaca manure, they will eat it. So they're always looking for something different for their diet. So I just want to kind of mix it up. All right. So that was just a quick video of giving the pumpkin that I did have to those particular bins, which are just basically coconut core and newspaper. There's no newspaper in them, but they are bins that actually have been, should have been harvested by now, but I'm letting them go, adding them more and more of the scraps to it. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your Friday night. This is New Era Gardener, and it's a pumpkin feeder. But we're going to actually have a pumpkin feast by adding more pumpkin as I get it. All right.